Welcome back, everyone, to UNinvested, the podcast where we give you everything you need to know, even if you feel like you know nothing. I'm Crockett Calloway.
I'm Sahil Seth.
And today's episode is a big one. Sahil and I just recently graduated Northwestern University with honors. We are multi-time founders, and we've also secured full-time roles in management consulting after graduating. And so naturally, we've had a lot of people reach out, especially over the last week, asking for what our advice is, the core advice we learned in college that's really contributed to our entrepreneurial mindset, our interest in business, and kind of just the growth that we've had. And so Sahil and I have not talked about this before this episode. We have no idea what each other is going to say. So I'll just kick it off to you, Sahil. What has been that core advice for you?
Yeah, I appreciate that intro, Crockett. For me, really, the core takeaway that I take from college is work ethic can beat talent or knowledge, whatever the two. So just a little bit of background on myself. I come from a family of doctors, so there is no business being talked about in my household. I had no business in any part of my life. When I came into college, I thought, maybe I'll be pre-med. But then when I came to Northwestern, it's just such a big business atmosphere environment. You know, I was an econ major at our school. So really pick up on a lot of things. And when I first wanted to get into business, I'll give you a little anecdote. I went to a career center, and the first thing they said to me was, oh, like, do you have any family, friends, anyone you could go to like kickstart your networking, get you in the process of recruiting. And to me, that baffled me because, as a kid coming from like that healthcare background, I had no idea where to start. But then I quickly found, I didn't give up. I started reaching out to people, emailing anyone and everyone, whether it be, people that graduated from Northwestern that had no idea, people that from past clubs. That was actually my greatest success, people from past clubs I was in. And I just started building up this like knowledge base. I think the best piece of advice I ever got was just subscribe to a ton of newsletters, which I did. I subscribed to like 10. If you guys want to know what they are, you can just reach out. And they really just helped me build up a base of knowledge that really propelled everything from there. And I just feel like my work ethic, where I was willing to put in those extra hours outside of class, really gave me an advantage, and kind of like that ability to start the podcast, go recruit for the jobs I wanted. But none of that stemmed from having any precursor talent, knowledge, anything like that. I really went from like business knowledge zero to, where I'm at now today.
I'm curious, Sahil. I think that work ethic like that, especially when you have no exposure, right? Or you might not come from, like you mentioned, like your family wasn't necessarily in business or tech or VC. How do you like garner the courage to kind of break into a field like that where people might not like? I know in business, obviously, a lot of people gatekeep when it comes to recruiting. There's kind of an iron wall a little bit. How do you like build up that courage to just dive into that work ethic and like forget about everything else?
That's a great question because failure is part of the process. The fruits of work ethic are not immediate. They're probably the most long-term, painful experience and journey you'll ever have. If you're like basing everything on yourself, like betting on yourself, just working hard, it's really just the belief in yourself that, you have the potential to do something great with your life. You have the potential to learn anything. You can go on YouTube, free university, some people like to say, and you can learn anything. And I guess it's just truly just believing in yourself and not letting failures knock you down. When I first was recruiting for, a management consulting role, the first 10 emails I got were rejection. I was like, I'm done for. Like, I should stop. I need to find like a new way. And then I got one lucky interview, and honestly, like that propelled me from there. You don't need a million successes. You just need one. So if you can weather the storm for those 100 failures, that one success is honestly, it makes everything else worth it. But, I've been talking a lot, so I'd love to hear what you have to say, Crockett, because, you also had 4 years of college.
Well, first of all, I love your advice, and it's something I still try to stick by. I think for me, the biggest thing I learned in college is that when it comes to being an entrepreneur, if you want to be entrepreneurial in whatever sense, the most important thing to be is a yes man. One of my favorite movies is Yes Man. It's this Jim Carrey movie where he basically, as a result of a couple different things, just has to say yes to every single thing that's asked of him. And he goes through this growth period. And I think today, especially when we live in an age where like we're always on TikTok, always on Reels, we're always seeing these like massive billionaires talk about their success, these startup founders talking about their success. Entrepreneurship feels like you need to have some crazy idea to be that successful. And I think in my own experience at Northwestern, right, when I was coming in, I just wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to be an entrepreneur, how to problem solve, how to pivot. And I basically just said yes to every opportunity that came up in front of me, even though I honestly had no interest in them. When I was a freshman, someone approached me and asked me if I was interested in clothes and selling clothing, and I ended up licensing and starting a clothing sales business with them. I did the exact same thing with a friend who was really interested in coffee and like creating a coffee startup. To be completely honest, I didn't even drink coffee at the time, so I had no interest in doing it. But by saying yes to every one of those, you're just opening an opportunity. If you keep saying no to yourself and like closing yourself off because maybe you have an idea of what entrepreneurship is and you need to wait for that key idea or that key opportunity, you're never going to get there.
Yeah. And I just foresee a lot of people saying, like, saying yes is easy, but finding that opportunity might be like the harder point. So do you have any advice for people, like how they could put themselves in positions to even say yes, whether that be leaving your dorm room open at all times?
Well, I mean, first of all, that's a great piece of advice, is keeping your dorm room open at all times. But I think being a yes man is definitely more subliminal. I think it's a matter of pulling interest out of people. As you're a freshman, right? Like, college is your first exposure to this like plethora of new perspectives, people with different motivations and ambition than you. And I think it's a matter of just allowing someone to talk and express what they're interested in, kind of like where their interests lie or where their motivations lie, and just going with it. Like, if you approach someone and you find out they're like super interested in fishing and you've never done that before, just let them talk about it. Let yourself understand if there's an opportunity in that space, if there's something to be learned. Maybe if they have an idea there that you can piggyback onto, right? Like, you just have to be open, let people express what they're interested in, and that's how you'll ultimately like be able to grow from that and learn from that, if that makes sense.
Proven Crockett advice is this podcast. We didn't go into college friends. We honestly met through our passion for venture capital. We had mutual friends, and like they're like, oh, like you guys kind of both into venture capital, you should meet up, and bada bing, bada boom. From there, ended up living together senior year, and then the podcast was formed, and here we are. So
next thing you know, UNinvested is to smash it.
Soon to come.
But Sahil's advice is equally as pertinent in that, right? Like, this podcast, as with everything else we do, is work ethic, right? And it would not have started if we hadn't, gotten off the ground and scoured YouTube for all the advice we could, and we're continuing to do that. So proof is in the pudding.
It's not easy to do this podcast. Sometimes we think about like just stopping it all the time. Like, is it really worth it? When you put in hours and hours, that one video just gets like 10 views. It's like, are we doing the right thing? But I think another piece of advice is like the reason we don't give up on this podcast, we keep doing it, is because it's genuinely fun.
Exactly. Well said. Well, with that being said, thanks again for tuning in. I'm Crockett Calloway.
I'm Sahil Seth.
And this is UNinvested.
Thank you.
This is a personal video. Any views or opinions represented in this video are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations we may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. The views expressed are for entertainment purposes only and not to be misinterpreted as actionable investment advice.